the thing with the EU's response to the sanctions is that at the highest level, so at a European institutional level, the response is very strong because they've got reasonably firm legal grounds to pass this blocking resolution and, in theory, to try and protect European companies from US actions. Now, the problem is that as soon as we go down to the level of national governments, that resolve to protect the JCPOA becomes much weaker. And we've seen just yesterday the Bundesbank blocking an Iranian transfer of 300 million euros. So clearly not very strong resolve to support the Iranians there. And then down to corporate level, there is no resolve at all to protect the JCPOA. Companies do not want to resist the US on this. It's just not worth it. And the fines levied by the blocking resolution, so the fines that the EU can impose for obeying US sanctions, are not nearly so large as the fines that the US can impose for breaking US sanctions. So yes, the EU, under its own terms, has a very strong case for resisting US action. The problem is that the action that it can take is very weak.
And getting back to the corporate response, the likes of Total, BP, Peugeot, Airbus, that made a beeline into Iran when the sanctions and the previous sanctions regime was lifted. Are they falling into line? Are they complying with US sanctions, or what is their position?
Yeah, absolutely, they're falling into line. I mean, I can't really think of a single case of a large European company that's resisting this move.
OK, and you argue, Marcus, that Washington's policy of increasing pressure and sanctions is flawed and counterproductive. Just explain to us why that is. Yeah,
so we at TS have been looking at this as like an attempt by the Trump administration to repeat its policy in North Korea. So what we saw in North Korea was this huge ratcheting up of rhetoric, announcing of sort of further sanctions or other concrete steps to take against North Korea, and at the same time the issuing of an open-ended invitation for talks. And they're trying to repeat this with Iran. Now the problem is that with Iran that won't work, that it's not a policy that can be just repeated. It's sort of cookie-cutter approach. It worked with North Korea, now let's apply it to Iran. The trouble is that Iran has governments that have to change over. So if I'm seen to act in absolute bad faith towards Iran, which is how the US is perceived at the moment, an Iranian government can't just be seen to kowtow to US demands and basically ignore the fact that the US betrayed it the last time and make a new deal. Politically, they haven't got room to do that because, okay, Iran is an autocracy on the one hand, but there are elements of it that are, semi-democratic, and a government can't afford to be seen to be going with Donald Trump on this. It wouldn't survive the next election.
Marcus, US sanctions on Iranian oil, they kick in on November the 4th. Will Tehran continue to remain defiant, or do you think this will be a catalyst that brings the Iranians to the negotiating table?
Well, as I say, I don't think the Iranian government has the political room to go to the negotiating table. So even if they want to on pragmatic grounds or on economic grounds, they just haven't got the domestic political room to do this. Now, as for what impact it will have on Iranian oil exports, I mean, I see figures saying that they'll reduce exports down to about 700,000 barrels per day. I think that's plausible.
And getting back to the domestic politics, Marcus, what is the risk of Rouhani being deposed either by the hardliners or by a popular uprising? Because if it is the hardliners who remove him, then arguably the implications for regional security are worse, not better.
Oh, absolutely they would be worse. Now, both those risks are sort of ouster from the street or an ouster from the Iranian deep state. Okay, they're quite unknowable risks. We just can't really know those probabilities. But I think what we can say is that Rouhani's policies will be shaped by trying to satisfy both those constituencies. So he's going to have to give the sort of more revolutionary, more clerical arm of the Iranian state a bit more leeway to cause the sort of regional mischief that it wants to cause. And that will impact US policy in Afghanistan, where Iran has influence over the Taliban, and will influence US policy in Iraq, where Iran has its own proxies there too. So it's definitely damaging to US interests, and it's almost certainly damaging to regional security. Even if Rouhani stays in office, these constituencies, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and a very angry people, are going to shape his policies from now on.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.